Colleagues, at this time, we're going to lift another item, and that is file item 87, SB 7. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Williams, what's your pleasure? Move the call. Mr. Williams has moved the call. Colleagues, at this time, we're going to call file item 82, SB 32. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 32 by Senator Pavley and others, enacting the greenhouse gases.
Thank you. Colleagues, if you could please lower your conversations. Mr. Ridley Thomas, you may introduce the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I rise to present SB 32, one bill that many should be aware of. It builds on the framework of the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006. Some 9 years ago, the state began its work in the reduction of greenhouse gases and building a framework for how we really invest in green infrastructure is what I call it, because I think sometimes we lose our way when we try to pit the environment versus the economy, and we can think of them as much more aligned than in juxtaposition. So what SB 32 does, and what amendments that this body recently voted on expand upon, are what many of us are concerned about, which is legislative authority. As scoping plans continue for the reduction of greenhouse gases and for the work that we see with our state regulatory agencies, any plan that is developed by the California Air Resources Board will have to come to the legislature, and we'll have a certain period of time to have oversight hearings, to have legislative input, and we'll have an opportunity as well to introduce legislation to give direction and advocate for concerns that we have. So for me, this has been a pretty unique process in trying to make sure that we get return on investment for Los Angeles area constituents. Some of you may realize that those industries that we call smokestack industries that have high wage jobs attached to them and the like are abundant in some areas. And those businesses, those smokestack industries, pay a great deal into cap and trade and environmental mitigation funds. And we have great concern that those monies don't always make it back home. And that's legitimate. We have concerns about workforce development. We have concerns about what the transition will mean in various industries. I'm a proponent of natural gas myself, and the California Air Resources Board sometimes doesn't seem to think that natural gas shouldn't even exist, that everything should be electrified yesterday and tomorrow. I recognize that a way to get their attention is to take a proactive step, a positive step, and that's what SB 32 is. SB 32 provides a pathway for this legislature to get back in the game and to engage on these pretty significant environmental measures that have made the state a leader in the broader national conversation and in international conversation. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would respectfully request an aye vote on this measure where we have an author who has worked deliberately. She's accepted amendments, and frankly, she's worked in good faith to address many of the concerns that have been brought up by members of this body as well as various industries. With that in mind, I would respectfully request an aye vote on SB 32. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Call's been moved. Mr. Holden moves a call. At this time, I'm going to lift the call on file item 82 for SB 32. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 25, noes 33. Measure fails. We have one more item on call at least, but at this time we're going to move to adjournments in memory and announcements. The following members were granted prior permission to speak in adjournment in memory. Members, if I could please ask if everyone could take your seats for the adjournments. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Patterson for his adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, we lost a wonderful, hard-charging Marine Corps veteran and veterans advocate, Dr. Charlie Waters. If that name sounds familiar, if ever any of you have been on the Veterans Affairs Committee, you probably heard some tough words from him. Charlie's mission was to make sure that people who put their lives on the line in service to our country were never forgotten. He and his high school friends from a small Northern California town joined the Marines in 1952 to do their part in the Korean War. He served 13 months in Korea, and he recalls losing many, many friends. After the war, Charlie served at the American Embassy in Uruguay. But his greatest role might very well be in fighting for the Veterans Home in Fresno, California. In 2012, when funding to build a home was promised but not yet delivered, Charlie joined with many local veterans to remind those serving here in Sacramento that promises made to our veterans must be promises kept. Charlie was there to celebrate, even though he was ill and in bad health, he was there to celebrate the grand opening of the Fresno Veterans Home in 2013, and he was there on September 3rd, 2014, at a surprise unveiling of a beautiful bronze bust exactly 1 year to the day that he passed. Now, these are his words. He said this: "I always fought like hell when he saw injustice, and he didn't stop fighting until he got the job done." We all believe in Fresno that his many accomplishments were prompted by deep down and genuine love for people and particularly for veterans. I and many others in Fresno were the recipients of his love and thoughtfulness, his kindness, and every now and then his harsh words to remind us to do the right thing. So for Charlie Waters, a hard-charging Marine who lived his life for others, particularly for veterans, and is fondly remembered in Fresno for his work that successfully brought the Veterans Home to us. We will adjourn in his memory. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, and he is one of the members of the greatest generation who has left a remarkable legacy. And although we're sad at his departing, we are joyful that we knew him, and we are joyful that he has left behind this wonderful legacy. Thank you for joining me and others in adjourning in his wonderful memory.
Thank you, members. Please bring the names to the desk to be printed in the journal. All requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. We still have at least one item that is on call, but I'm going to move to the announcements. The Assembly Committee on Revenue and Taxation will meet and hear SJR 10, Senator Stone, on Wednesday, September the 9th, 2015 at 9:30 a.m. in the Rules Committee room. And members, tomorrow, September the 9th, is the last day to notice intent to remove a bill from the inactive file to be returned to the third reading on September the 11th. The session schedule is as follows: Wednesday, September the 9th, floor session at 10 a.m. Thursday, September the 10th, floor session at 10 a.m. Friday, September the 11th, floor session at 10 a.m. We have two items left. I want to recognize Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I ask that SB 32 be noticed for reconsideration.
Mr. Ridley Thomas is noticing SB 32 for reconsideration, file item 82. And now, if we could go back, I'm going to lift the call on file item 81. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 28, noes 26. Measure fails. Mr. Williams moves to reconsider. The clerk will note. At this time, all other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions will be continued. Seeing and hearing no further business, I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Holden moves and Ms. Waldron seconds that this House stands adjourned until Wednesday, September the 9th at 10 a.m. Quorum call is lifted.